hosting someone whose life experience spans across cultures, continents, and decades of experience in managing family wealth.
Tuning in today, we have a global banker turned advisor, consultant, and an author, Mr. Phillipe J. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Welcome. Thank you. So, hi, my name is Phillipe Weil. I was born and raised in Switzerland, Zurich, Switzerland, into a family. I was the fourth of four children, into a family of entrepreneurs. My great-grandfather started a textile business, which my grandfather and then my father were running when I was a child, which was formative. It was fun as a small child to run into the factory and everyone thought you're the sweet boy because you're the son of the owner and all that. So I remember that a little bit because when I was 7, my father decided to liquidate the business after about 8 years because of the economical situations. It's a long story, but we ended up not having a business anymore. And my father was then 45 years old, and everyone said, so what next? And also economically, that wasn't so easy. We were comfortable, there was money coming in, and suddenly we didn't have a business. So my father then pivoted and did other stuff. And this was also something which most probably I learned, is that you have to adapt to new realities and facts and be versatile and don't be stuck in, because the business is 80 years old, you're not allowed to touch it. And change it, and if you have to, you do. It turned out very well for us, and well, let's go fast forward 10 years. When I was about 15 or 16, we were very wealthy and went to the nice hotels and the good restaurants, and I met a lot of interesting people in interesting places of the world. And I think I had a happy childhood. We had a dog until I was 12, and yeah.
All right. So when you look back into your formative years, during your childhood, what are some disciplines and upbringing values that you saw in your family? Because I understand you had a Jewish upbringing, right?
So being Jewish is one of the values, but don't forget I grew up in Switzerland, and Switzerland is a very regulated and organized place. And you do what you're told, and you're not questioning. Neither your parents, nor your teacher, nor your educators, nor anyone else. The old lady in the public transportation will tell you something, you have to comply. So it was a bit of tough upbringing because you had all those rules. And me being a little bit of a jumpy guy, jump around all the time. So my teachers didn't like me much. But yes, it's formative. You learn that you have to find your own way in the world, which has a lot of rules. And especially when you're a bit different than the others, then this means not only because of ADD, also being Jewish, Judaism in Switzerland is a very small minority, so we were in a minority group, economically very well, but always an outsider or different than the others. So this taught me a lot of seeing the other and understanding that other people are different and that you can't just be thinking about you also have to think about the others.
All right. Growing up in the textile business, you must have seen your father very closely interact with the business, with the daily runs and throughs of the business. Was there something you admired about him, or did he teach you specifically in terms of financial discipline?
One of the funny things is that my father, whenever a bill arrived, it didn't took 60 minutes and the bill was paid. My father never waited for the last moment to pay a bill, or when it said 30 days payment, he didn't say, okay, I have 30 days to pay. The same day it was paid. So he was very obnoxious about not having debt, not owning everyone anything, and always be polite and correct with everyone, with suppliers and clients and all that. I think that what I learned from my father is directness and integrity. It is, you have to be integral in business. You have to treat your employees properly. You have to treat your clients properly. You have to treat your suppliers properly, and also people you're not dependent on or they're depending on you. You just have to be a good person. And also I learned from him that sometimes you do the stuff you don't like. I mean, my father, and I write about this in my book, my father, I think, always wanted to be a lawyer. And we found a document he wrote when he was in school. After he passed, we went through his papers where he wrote that he wants to be a lawyer, but his father told him that you're going textile, and he went into textile. But when he was retired at the end from his second career, he went to study law at the age of 63 at the Zurich University. He didn't finish it, but he went to courses of law because that's what he always wanted. So he was passionate about one thing and he didn't give up. And when he had the opportunity to do it, he went to do it.
While we're talking about your family, there's something called the third generation curse, right? And where third generation is not able to maintain the family wealth. Whereas what I have read about you, you're a fourth generation person being born into a wealthy family. So what are certain observations you've had that, your family has been able to maintain that wealth, if I may ask?
I'm thinking of how to answer this question because my professional today, Phillipe will answer you with the professional side, like governance, and you have to have discussed everything and structure. But I don't think that we didn't have a family office, we didn't have a family governance, but there was an underlying clearness of what is meant to be and how we see wealth in our family. We were not driven by the money. We were driven by being a good person. And I think that the way I see it today, we are running our business, 4 siblings together in harmony, in kind of harmony. We're siblings, but in kind of harmony, we are together and it works. And that's instilled to us because, again, privilege and obligation, and it's not always your way. It's a sentence which I don't know that I learned it from my parents, but it's something I tell my children all the time. Is my freedom stops where your freedom starts. And if we learn how to handle that freedom border, sometimes you take a bit more freedom and I have to a little bit step back, and sometimes I take a bit more freedom and you have to step back. But if it's this give and take, then it works. If everyone just thinks of himself, then usually it falls apart. But the third generation curse, by the way, it's discussed now if it's just a nice saying or it's actually true. With a little bit of work, a little bit of goodwill, a little bit of giving that freedom, flexibility, every family can go into the third, fourth, fifth, sixth generation. It needs work. That's what I think is and not think that everything is just given. No, it works. So no. Invest in family, invest in governance, invest in many things to keep it going. It's like when you have a plant, you have to water it, and then sometimes you need to put fertilizer in it, and sometimes it's the coffee powder and whatever they tell you to do, that the plant is growing. If you just let it there and hope that rain will deal with it, the plant will die.
Okay. So, delving a little bit into your early careers, because I believe you were not always a family office manager, right? So, how did your career start out? What is it that you...
I have to laugh because I'm the ugly duckling in the family, or the black sheep. My parents very much cherish education and university degrees and study and learn and be a good student. And as I said before, with my attention disorder, I wasn't such a good student, especially in the Swiss school system where they don't even want to recognize that those things existed in the 70s and 80s. I write with my left hand. My teacher wanted to force me to learn to write with my right hand. My mother had to go to the Ministry of Education head doctor to get an approval that I can write with my left hand, because the teacher would not accept that by herself. So we had to force her to accept that I write with left hand. She didn't like me so much, my teacher, because of that. I think, as we all do when one has ADD, you overpower that with charm or intelligence or other stuff. But so I had a tough starting as a school as a pupil. So I don't have a university degree. I actually went 9 years to school and then did a professional school, a Swiss banking school. So for 3 years, I was learning on the job. So I was 3.5 days of working in the bank and 1.5 days of going to school. You learn accounting, you learn language, you learn a little bit of law about banking, of economics and finance and stuff like that. But it's geared for becoming a bank clerk, not becoming a bank owner. And you work in those 3 years, most probably in all departments of the bank from A to Z. So I even spent a half a day in the phone centrals to put phone calls from the operator to the to the relationship manager. I worked on the stock market, I worked in trading, I worked in accounting, in archives, name it, I did it. So I learned the profession from the bottom up. And I think that it's a very good school. lacks a little bit the macroeconomic connections between stuff. I mean, I by now learn the stuff on a different way, but I started way on the bottom, okay? I started with the age of 17 at Bank Julius Baer as a trainee for 3 years. I was trained as a banker, and I worked in 24 different departments in these 3 years. And when I finished at 3 years, I started as a securities back office with Swiss stocks. So every morning I got a pile of all the trades the bank did the day before, and I had to process certain ones of them. I had this thing, look at sort of what was relevant for me, had to transfer stocks from one bank to the other or from one client account to the other, all that stuff, administration, back office, which was, again, a good school because I understood how a bank functions. And from there, I went on into war. We'll talk more about that later.
All right.
So, Phillipe, what I've understood is you're a college dropout. Is that true?
I actually never got to the college. Okay. Yes, but I am a college dropout. My sisters and my brother have university degrees. My brother has a master in science, and my sister has a master in language, and master in this, and master in that. They all have 20 years of studying. My wife, by the way, also. And I have 12 years on education, yes.
Perfect. So the question was that, you're a college dropout. So how does one get into Julius Baer? And also you've worked at JP Morgan. So what's the story behind you?
I talked my way into every place. No. So Julius Baer is easy because this is a program the banks are offering. So they take young people which are not choosing the way of going through university track to be trained as good employees because they are trained by the bank. So the bank will actually value such employees. My best friend who started with me in April of 1985 is still at Bank Julius Baer today, but he's number 3 in the bank. He made all the career up, started on the bottom like me, but he, after the 3 years of being trained in all those 24 departments, he came to the trading department and he became a foreign exchange trader. And from that, made a career, and today is chief risk, chief trading, chief, I don't know what, a lot of things. And you can do that in Switzerland because the school system and the education system is geared this way, saying not everyone has to have an university degree. You can do very good jobs without having a university degree. You might not be a professor, but look at me, I'm sitting in a university and I'm being called a professor, but I'm not an academic, but you can get very far starting this way.
No, I think that's actually a very good system that Switzerland has. So what were some of the defining lessons that you learned from your job at JP Morgan and Julius Baer?
So Julius Baer was really the base which gave me the knowledge of how a bank functions. And this helped me in all other jobs in banking, because when I came, for example, at JP Morgan, which I arrived there through a summer job. They were looking for someone to help out in the department because of whatever shortage they had, and I started as a summer job. And that summer then also decided not to go back to that school I was going to. I was applied for I wanted to do another degree to up with my siblings, not to have at least a BA, but it didn't work out well. So in that summer, I found out that I'm not passing the test of that school after 1 year. And I had the summer job at JP Morgan. So at the end of the summer job, I told the guys at Morgan, by the way, I'm now looking for a job. I don't go back to school. And they said, no, we only take people with PhD and with university degrees. But actually, we have this hole here which we have to fill. Why would you stay sitting? Yeah, we will keep you. So they kept me, and then they sent me to New York into the trainee program, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm a little bit old cookie at JP Morgan because I didn't have a PhD in economics or anything else. I learned it from the job. So when I came, for example, to the trainee program in New York, where all my peers were from all over the world, and they all had, this one was reading history in Cambridge, and that one was a Royal Air Force pilot, and this one was a PhD in astrophysics, and I was sitting there like, okay, I by now have 7 years of banking experience, and that's about it, what I can show. But it ended up that I knew stuff much better than they knew, because they knew the theory. They learned Black-Scholes models and they learned stuff, but I knew how it works. Yes. And I knew how once you put the trade in, what happens to that ticket and what happens to the stocks which you just bought, where are they coming from and where are they going to and how does it work and what does it need? So I ended up understanding that I have a certain pair of tools, certain part of tools, and they have other parts of the tools, and together we actually work well. So you need the smart guy, and you need the educated guy, and you need the practical person. And when all those people together work, then the bank goes forward, and the trade goes forward, and the business goes forward. So that handicap, which we think like a college dropout or not having all this, was actually an advantage at the end. I made it to an advantage.
So that's interesting. But would you like to slightly delve into the cultural differences that you found in Julius Baer if compared to JP Morgan? Because I think one of them is a Swiss bank and the other is an American investment bank, right?
We are just starting for my career. I mean, afterwards I went to work in Israel in a bank, and that's another culture again. I mean, cultures. There's someone who said culture culture eats structure for breakfast. Culture is much more important than anything else. You can make so many rules and governance and structures, but people in that thing have to live with this. So the culture creeps in and takes over. The Swiss banking culture, the American banking culture, and then the Middle Eastern banking culture is completely different, correct? The Swiss are everything has to be precise and organized and structured, and you take this piece of paper, you put the number in it, and then you give it to the next one, and then he puts that number in it, and you give it to the next one, and he puts the stamp on it, and then he goes, that's the process. A process is organized and thought through from A to Z. So American banks usually also have the process, but it's much more about let's get the deal done. All right. We'll see then how we do the process. Let's first do the deal. Or perhaps I give you another example, and it's an example I used before, now it just came up to me. At JP Morgan, after my trainee program, I was a market maker in fixed income and fixed income derivatives. I was sitting at a trading desk, had all those screens in front of me, had all those machines and all that. I needed Excels, which are calculating very fast, taking information from Reuters, Bloomberg, and spitting out numbers so that I can make a price at derivatives. The Excels were complex. So we asked someone of IT, which had a PhD in physics, to write us macros on Excel. They made a steering committee, sat down, had 10 people sit around the table. So you need this, you need that, you need this. 3 months later, I got an Excel macro which could do everything. Calculate every option, strategy, straddle, string, I don't want to go into details, but all those options, I just asked them to give me a system that can calculate one thing, but they gave me a Rolls Royce. But if I would do that in Israel, I would go to the bank in Israel or to a high-tech guy and say, I need a program which can calculate this Black-Scholes formula for this option. I will have it in half an hour. It will work exactly for what I asked for doing. If I hit the button left doing it or right of it, the whole thing collapses. It's a beta version. It's just working for what I asked for. I get exactly what I needed. MacGyver, I don't know if you know this TV series. You're too young for that. It was a TV series in the 90s of someone who always repairs everything with duct tape and a little bit of wire, and everything works just because of that. The airplane, the car, the world is being done with duct tape. So improvisation is something which is done in the Middle East or in Asia. Switzerland, everything is planned, but until they get off the plan, it's already too late, it's complicated, it's an elephant. In America, let's do the deal. And then we'll see how we handle.
And as an intern or as an apprentice, when you started off, do you look back at how it really helped you to be in Switzerland, or do you prefer the cultures in America and Israel?
Yes. Thank God we are living in a global world and we are global nomads. I love this and I love this and I love this. So I love to be in Switzerland. Everything is organized. Everything works. After 2, 3, 4 days, it gets boring because everything works. And then you go off to the Middle East and then, but this dynamics all the time and everything has to be checked and everything has to be redone. I have enough of all this pressure. Then you move back, go back, and then you can come down a little bit and then you go back. So I love that I have both worlds, and also India and America. I mean, I never see the half empty glass. I always see the half full. I always see what's good about this culture. What can I take from this culture and implement with my life, and not what's bad. When I complain about such a culture, so let it be. I look at the things which are good. Absolutely.
And at what point did you decide that you want to transition from traditional finance into family offices? What was that turning point for you?
It was a necessity, actually. No, it was a calling, a passion, and a necessity. I was stuck in my career at the age of 29. Stuck in the sense, not that something went bad, but in the sense of like, it was getting boring. I left the world of trading at JP Morgan, and I worked then for Republic National Bank of New York in Zurich, and I was in private banking, and I had my clients, and I knew exactly where I'm going. I will have this career of a private banker. We'll have more clients, more assets, more this, a nicer office, but not many things are happening. It's a bit boring. I had my Jewish career. I was the president of this organization, and I was in the board of the synagogue and all that. Like also there, I knew exactly where it's going. I still was not married, so that was one of the issues. But sometimes it was too boring. As I said, Switzerland, too boring, too planned, too organized. And I decided to move to Israel to get a bit more excitement, also to perhaps find a partner, and also to start a new, also career-wise. I actually wanted to leave banking and want to do something completely different. I arrived in Israel, and I understood that I'm not made for this culture to start from scratch and learn something new. I go back to what I know best, and kind of technology transfer. I came as that Swiss banker into an Israeli bank and built a private banking division for that bank. It was interesting and challenging. And then after 4 years, I decided to start my own firm. So when I started my own business in 2001, I just got married. And with the approval of my wife, he said, okay, now I'm becoming independent and on my own. I started as an asset manager, as a private asset manager, advising private clients for their banking needs. And I found out that suddenly when I changed the side of the table, I came on the table of the side of the client and not of the side of the bank, I stopped selling and I started actually trying to find solutions and helping the clients. And the clients suddenly opened up. When you're a banker, you see most probably 20% of the wealth of your client. Because he has 3, 4, 5 banks, he doesn't tell you everything because he wants to divide and conquer and make sure that he makes more money. If he challenges you, if you don't do well, we'll go to Bank of America. And if you don't do well, I go to Citibank. So you compete, they're playing you like horses in a horse race, okay? Once you're their side, they actually want you to consolidate. So the clients were coming and said, okay, I have some money there, some money there, some money there. Why don't you make me a picture and understand where are my risks and where my... So I suddenly was the asset manager of the family. I was the investment committee. I didn't manage all of the money, but I had influence on much more. And then I found out that the conversation the client has in my office is half an hour about performance and yields and portfolio allocation, but 2.5 hours about the son-in-law, about how do I bring the business to the next generation, how do I make sure that my children are not spoiled because of the money, how do I hide my girlfriend from my wife? Literally, there were things going on in my office. I'm like, wow, I thought I'm an asset manager, but I'm actually a psychologist and I'm a confidant and I'm becoming a holder of secrets for families. And also, and that might sound a bit snobby, and I think it's the moment now that we should say it's always better to be on the side when you have money. It's always better to be on the side when you can give money to people, but it's not so easy to be rich. There's a lot of things going on which are which make it difficult to manage money. And the clients are already rich. So they're less interested if they make 5% or 6%. They're interested to beat inflation, obviously. They want to preserve their wealth. But more than that, it's not so important. What's important that no one steals it from them. So at the end, I found out that the passion and what keeps people up at night is those issues, which I'm today doing, is governance and how do I bring it to the next generation and how do I make my family happy, much more than how many more dollars I can make. And that's why slowly and surely I switched from pure asset management into pure helping families live with their wealth.
So the family office space is exploding all around the world right now, right? But I do feel that India is somehow lagging if compared to the rest of the world. So do you think this is because of a cultural differentiation or how families approach family office advisors? What's your experience in India?
Okay, look, I work all around the world. I'm really global. I worked in South America, Central America, North America, Europe, Africa, little, and India and other Asian. We're in Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, I already had clients. So I've seen the world, and I've seen billionaires and multi-billionaire families, and I've seen centimillionaire families. To put like the finger on cultural differences, it's the evolution of money, okay? Old money, 8th generations, 10th generations families in North America and Europe obviously are much more refined and know more what they want and what their problems are. And they also have assets which are 200 years old. And it's a different thing to handle a castle in Czechoslovakia than to buy a mansion in Texas. So there's the difference of the old money, the new money a little bit, the cultural difference. Then there's the cultural difference of the size of the families. Then there's the cultural business also where the business is coming from, where the money is coming from. And then there's nouveau-ish and old money. But the cultural thing is also the evolution of where you are in reformism, or how modern is the society. I mean, in Saudi Arabia, it's a different society than it is in Sweden, okay? But at the end, inside the family, it's the values of the family which are counting. So there's a lot of parallel because the Jewish tradition and the Indian tradition. India is about family. And Jewish family, or the Jews are also about family. Israel is very much about family and children. In Europe, when you're 18, you leave the home and that's it. Not in Italy, but in Northern Europe, you leave the home and that's normal. You meet for Christmas perhaps, about that, okay? You talk to your parent perhaps once a week, if not once a month. Whereas in Israel, and I'm sure in India, you talk to your parents once a day, at least. And in a positive and a negative way, your parents are breathing down your neck. They're here all the time. They're controlling you. Everything is planned for you, and you just have to comply, kind of. This is breaking away because we all send our children abroad to study, and then they come back and they become Americans, and then they come back from Harvard and behave like American MBAs, and your grandfather will say, what happened to my grandchild? This was this nice boy who just said what I told him to do, he was doing, and now suddenly he's speaking up. So yes, there is a cultural inherent thing in your culture. Indian family office world is newer. Also, don't forget that India's economy is 78 years old. The economy, which is the Indian nation, before that, the colonial system was different. So India is young. India was first a communist, socialist country until it became a capitalistic country. It took a few years, like, by the way, Israel as well. So I would say that family wealth, private, individual family wealth is 40 years, 50 years in India. So businesses and money is most probably in the second generation and comes to the third generation. It's not 8th generation, 10th generation, besides royalty and a few other. But so obviously the needs are different today. But at the end, it's the same. It's a patriarchal system. It's a lot of honor system, which is very Asian. And the Jewish side also, and the Middle Eastern, it's like you don't talk back to your grandfather and you accept what he says. But then, as I said, you send the young people to America to study, and then they come back and have a bit of a bigger mouse, and the family has to learn how to deal with it. So this is a bit more what I'm seeing here and I'm dealing with is this generational change of how you see values. But at the end, the problems are the same. How do I bring the money to the next generation? How do I talk to, what about marriages and prenups and postnups, which don't exist so much here? And how do I protect and ring fence the family's wealth that not the other family gets it and all that? So these are the same everywhere. The concern, what keeps people up at night is the same. Will my children be safe? Will my wealth be safe? Will the business continue? Will my, whatever I created be continued and all these other, so at the end it's the same without being the same. Right.
So you made a mention about prenups. So how do your Indian clients deal with division of wealth post-divorce?
Look, there is the traditional and there's the less traditional. So the traditional obviously is the daughter marries out, is now part of the other family. We don't care about her until she, God forbid, divorces and then comes back into our family. There is the family law, which is based on your religion also. I mean, it's very complex and I don't understand it. So I take local lawyers and give them to do the stuff. I'm a generalist, okay? I'm not a specialist in anything. I'm a specialist in family. But all the problems families have, I'll bring the right person to help. Or put it differently, I am the conductor. I'll have the tax lawyer, the best tax person, which we need for this case. He will play the cello. And I'll have the best accounting firm, which this issue or this family needs, and he plays the trombones. And I'll have the best psychologist if needed for this family, because we need a psychologist right now. Or whatever, drug prevention. Unfortunately, there's also a dark side to money, so there's a lot of things we do there also. I don't have to understand Indian tax law and Indian family law, because I will not. I have not studied here, I'm not a lawyer, but I know to pick the right lawyer. Because this family loves brands, so they need the biggest law firm with the fanciest partners, because it makes them confident that they get the good advice. Whereas this family is lean and mean, and they need just the smart lawyer. Doesn't have to be show off Main Street. It can be in a little office in Pune and do the same work that the big firm is doing for less money and much more efficient, because he has no 2,000 clients to show off. But that doesn't matter. It matters what the client needs. So it's tailor-made solutions. So the question was prenup, postnup, preserving. So ring fencing assets for risks. There's in every law or legal system or world tools to do that. So if there is nuptial agreements, wonderful. Otherwise, there's trusts or other vehicles to make sure that, or you keep the money with the parents until that young person has found the right partner and has started life and has started family and is more mature, and marriage is more mature and everything looks good. And then you release more. And first you hold back. There's many ways of dealing with issues, with in-laws which become outlaws. We have many things, many tools. If the legal system doesn't help, then something else will help. So that's the speciality of my work, and that's what differentiates me from just a family office provider. A family office provider is an asset management firm with some things attached, and I'm none of that. I am a tailor-made solution for your family. I don't have products. I only have solutions. Whereas a scaled-up family office needs to have products. This is this division, they offer this and these services. This is that division, they offer this and these services. I have a palette of services I have done in the past, and I have a little bit of knowledge, and I know who to go to. And I might every year or two once discover some new problem which I have never heard of, or which is new, AI, crypto, blockchain, and then, oh, that's something I haven't done yet. And then I'll investigate and will help my client, and we learn together how to deal with this.
Right. And I mean, as you just mentioned that you're not a specialist, you're a generalist, right? And you're a specialist in terms of family. And you've been so for the past 3 or 4 decades now. Has it ever happened that unintentionally you worsened a family situation by your advice?
I have no harm. So my thing is that I don't do harm. So I have most probably, I'll phrase it this way, helped families identify their real problems instead of just always layering it over with another layer of cement and another layer of plaster and say, no, everything is fine, it's our family. I might have cracked it open and say, look at that, that's your real problem. Now, is this helping, or is this, most probably it was very uncomfortable in that moment, because the patriarch suddenly found out that he, effed up. And then he gets angry at me. But this is my integrity. Okay, I give you a wonderful example. Just came up to my mind. I had this family, they were very short, because I do projects, sometimes it's short clients. This client came to me, hi, I have this family governance, and I want to set up a family office, and so you should help me to do a little bit of building that family office. Not in my family office, I'm just a consultant helping you building up your family. So he came and then they said, okay, we sat down 1.5 days. I was reading the governance his father wrote, which is a horrible piece of paper which cannot be implemented. I said him so. I said, look, this is 1980s. We're now in 2020. We have to do that. We have to change that. We have to change that. But I get the zip of who you are and what you are. And he was very concerned about his privacy and his secrecy, because he's in a country where things are not going well and he's afraid of kidnapping and stuff like that. what most important is that they don't know me and that they know, and I actually don't want anything in my country. I want it in Switzerland because that's nice and secret and privacy and the people that work, everything. So fine, that's exactly what I would do as well. And this, and I want really secrecy and so that was what I remember all that. 2 months later, he calls me, can you come to Zurich? I want to introduce you to the people I've hired and who are doing now my family office stuff. Okay. So the evening before, I Google, I don't know why I did it. I Googled the man's name to see what's going on with his secrecy. And I found out that a week ago, a company was created in Liechtenstein, which is next to Switzerland, the tax optimized country. A company was created, let's say my client is called Miller. A company was created, the Miller Family Foundation, Family Office Limited. They're like, what the? He said he's about secrecy. What are those idiots doing? So I walk into the meeting in the morning and say, what do I do now? Do I put that in front of those new guys? Or do I play along and be the nice consultant and listen and say, oh, how beautiful? And then pull the client aside and say, man, yes. I said, you know what? I'll throw the bomb. I opened my laptop, click, turned it around and said, what is this? Didn't you tell me that you want security? Didn't you tell me you want secrecy? Why you put your name on the company which you created? Yeah. He was sitting there, he was looking at these guys and said, have you done that? And they said, no, sir, this is a mistake and we will cancel it. I never saw the client again. I never saw these people again because my integrity destroyed my own business. But I'm 100% proud about it. Because one day he will come on his knees back to me and say, oh, you were so right. You know, these guys weren't worth the thing. I fired them. I closed the business. I need to know, can you help me now to build the real family office? Because I showed my integrity. This is, I think, my only asset I have beside my mouse is my integrity. And he told me that he is afraid of security. So the number one lesson is, don't put your name on the door. Okay, so this is examples of, you don't learn that in school, you don't learn that at university, and it's not a service I'm offering, I'm using my brain. That's my service.
So, Phillipe, how important is financial compatibility between partners?
Interesting question. I would phrase it differently. How much do you have to prepare your children, or before you marry, before you have partners, that money is an issue in a partnership? So yes, obviously it is a big issue. And even so, in the 21st century, there's a gender division because male want to be alpha, want to be the leaders, and women sometimes like that the husband is taking care of the household and blah, blah, blah. And if the woman comes with the money and the husband has no money, then not only it's a disbalance, it's also then the wrong gender kind of. Unfortunately, I've seen it still that male thinks that he has to be dominant even if he doesn't have the money, and she is not allowed to be dominant, and so she has the money. And it doesn't mean that the one who has the money has to be dominant. That's also something we have to say. So it's very complicated, but it starts in the education and not when you date. Okay? It's like if you know from young age on that you are privileged and it comes with obligations and that you are a bit different than the general public and you go to school with the general public or you get date general public, that you have to know how to handle it and also make sure that the guy or the girl who falls in love with you is not falling in love with your money and your story, but actually with your personality. So I'm married to a woman who comes from a very simple background. And I was a pampered childhood and always had money available when needed and when not needed. And came from Switzerland to Israel, and she's from Israel. So there's a lot of cultural differences, by the way. She's also Sephardic and I'm Ashkenazi. We're not going there. She's coming from a complete different world. And I can tell you that when I invited her as my girlfriend, first time to Switzerland, we came to my parents' home. Thank God my parents were very far away on a cruise. We entered the house. After 2 minutes, she told me, take me away from here. And we jumped into the car and we did a 3-hour ride just in the mountains and in the pastures of Switzerland. She said, this is too big, too much for me. I can't cope with this. You and me, that doesn't work. You that. Rich guy, grew up in his house, swimming pool, forest in the building, a park around the house. It was the park, but her eyes, it looked like a park. And I come from this one-bedroom apartment family with, where's the compatibility? I said, we love each other, and we make it work. And, and as I said before, and I'm not going to elaborate, I also go to the bathroom, and I also snore, and I also sleep on a bed. We are normal people. Rich people are poor people with money. Okay, we are afraid that we are not good enough. We think we are not beautiful. All the angst you have as a young child, as a teenager, as a young twin, also the rich kid has that. Perhaps he can buy Botox more, and he can buy nicer clothes, and he can hide whatever he is and his worries are. But we are human beings, period. Okay. So then you have to work it out. Yes, my money, her money, not always paying because otherwise she feels that she's being lured into my money. And there is a little bit of using common sense of how you play the money game while you're dating. And once you're married, and then it comes education and stuff, there's always, it's not that it's gone. We're married for 25 and a half years and money is still an issue. Not that there's no money, but there's too much money. And that I will buy something, says, again, you're spending money, but it's not in the budget. Or well, we don't have a budget, but we have a house budget. And we have we always check the pulse of how much we spend every month, how much credit cards bills are going out, and how much, because we want to be sure that we're not going crazy and that we actually spend the money on things we need and not on the money we don't.
So, because your wife and you come from different cultural backgrounds, does it affect how you raise your children differently?
So we had to have a few discussions how we want to raise our children, because I think the most important thing is that one parent says no, then the other parents cannot say something. Yes, just go ahead and do it. And if dad said no, so it's no. Afterwards at night, she can tell me, why did you say no? I mean, that took a bad thing and all that. And then we discuss if the decision was the right decision. But towards the child, it's one decision. The parents is one voice. So, yes, my wife has pulled me down a little bit from my luxury world of everything is being done for me. And I had to learn to do stuff by myself, which I was used to have outsourced to the nanny or to the maid or something like that, which brought me then to teach my children also to be a bit more grounded. And for me, as I always told my children, is I'm more important for me that you said good morning to the janitor by his name, good morning, Mr. Smith, and thank you to the guard at the school in the afternoon when you leave the school. Thank you, Mr. So-and-so, for guarding us, not this way, but thank you and hello, and not just walk by. That's more important for me than if you brought a good grade or a mediocre grade. Because we have to be good human beings. So we teach our children to be good human beings. When I do the charitable stuff, it's a long story, so I cut it very short. I went to a charity, came back, and had a little movie. I looked on the computer, and my daughter was standing. She was 8 years old, standing next to me, and saw me crying because it was a very touchy story of some charity of cancer patients and how they help them, where I'm one of the donors. And she said, "Daddy, why are you crying?" And I explained to her that we are helping some organization which helps cancer patients. And 2 weeks later in school, they did some, you can sell your stuff and children to buy from you. And she made chocolate balls, cookie balls, and wanted to sell them. And half an hour before I had to drive her to school, I said, "Oh, Dad, can you make me a sign saying everything I make by selling those cookies goes for children with cancer?" And I said, I did my education. It works. She has learned that we are privileged. We don't need those 5 cents she's making from her cookies. Those children need it. So this is one of the education. And also, I think that my children get monthly money for when they were kids to buy sweets, to go to McDonald's, and whatever they want. But it's not in indulgence that they could splat their money around. So they took summer jobs. And my son worked in some chips shop in summer, where in Israel it's about 35 Celsius, 36 Celsius outside. He works in a French fry shop where there's the oil boiling all the time. So he was standing in front of the fritters making chips for 2 months in summer. And I was very proud that he was doing that, because he wanted his money to buy himself a pair of shoes because he loves sport shoes. He was trading on those Jay-Z with shoes and all that stuff. So he wanted to do that, but I tell him, we are not financing your hobbies. You finance them yourself. Now he's after army and he's before university. He works as a waiter in a very fancy restaurant in Tel Aviv. And he is a sports teacher because he's a sportsman. So he works as a sports teacher in a sports center, and he works as a waiter in a restaurant to save money for a big trip he wants to do in Asia later next year.
Because that's very unconventional. You're going to do that in India.
And my daughter worked now in a bakery selling bread at a very fancy schmancy bakery, but she was selling bread and cakes for 6 months, saved money, and now she's traveling in Asia. My youngest, she's just finishing school, and 3 times a week works in a sushi restaurant, serving sushi. Because she was now in another 2 weeks, it's vacation in Israel. She's flying to Budapest she's 17. She's flying to Budapest with 3 of her friends, and all 4 of them paid the ticket themselves, paid the Airbnb themselves. Of course, we give her money to buy clothes and go and have a beer. But she's so proud that she saved money to do that trip. And I remember that feeling when I was a child. I didn't work. I worked with age 17 and started working, so why should I? And I remember saving money every month to be able to buy that CD player. Okay, today an iPhone 3, an iPhone 17. If I want to buy an iPhone 17 today, I just walk into the shop, buy, pay the credit card, walk out. No more feeling. But that CD player, Technics, I can even tell you the number, I think. When I bought that CD player, I had to save for 10 months. And I walked to the shop and I felt I was at least Bill Gates walking in saying, I would like to have that. And then I carried the box to the car and drove home and plugged it in, the CD. The feeling was amazing. Okay? So I think that this is something which we have to learn. If everything comes like money just falls down from the tree, that doesn't help. So it's educational.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Phillipe. We've had a vast conversation ranging from your banking experience to you joining the family office space to discussing your family. And it was a pleasure to know, how you've been raising your children. And hopefully we look forward to hosting you again in the next
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.